21st anniversary of our rally that we held here on the 19th of January last year. And we're going to do it again to carry on the mission of protecting the rights of you, we, the people, and making sure that those who think they are in charge of the world know that actually they're our employees and we are not the servants. And before I introduce our first speaker, a few words. In remembrance that this is also Sunday, the day of the Sabbath, we'll take a moment to open with a small prayer and benediction. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. And in English, O God, will you keep in perfect peace those whose minds are fixed on you, for in returning and rest we shall be saved. In quietness and trust shall be our strength. I'd also like to take a moment and remember some of the other people for whom this holiday, this weekend, we remember. Robert E. Lee, Thomas Judd, Jonathan Jackson, Stonewall Jackson, and Martin Luther King. Three heroes who all stood for the rights of the people, who all stood in defiance of central government tyranny, who all stood for the rights of people to be free and independent in their own homes. We must not remember what they gave for their country and for the people. And also remember in our prayers those who are serving, our airmen, soldiers and sailors and Marines, firefighters, paramedics, and all others for whom this is a normal duty day, and who holidays is just a day where you actually work a little harder. Amen. Our first speaker is Mr. Charles Lawler, Major United States Marine Corps, businessman, and one of our candidates for governor here in 2014.
Thank you so much, and I'm grateful to be here this nippy afternoon on a Sunday. Looks like you all are well warmed up here, and I know you got some great speakers lined up too, so I'll leave my comments brief but yet to the point. This was one of the principal reasons why I made a decision to enter this race to run for governor. This is one of the things for me that signaled enough is enough. When they passed this bill and they pushed it forward, literally driving it down our throats without even the opportunity of a referendum. And I began to see our Constitution, our rights, to not just being trampled on, but pushed and pulled away from us. I knew something had to be done sooner than later. But I wanted it to be done in my heart and mind in a way that I knew it not only bring glory to God on a wonderful Sabbath day, but also so my children could respect me and my fellow patriots could respect me, to do it the same way Dr. King had in mind. Do it nonviolently and do it at the ballot box. We're here all gathered together on a nippy Sunday afternoon for that purpose, because in our hearts, although it might have been passed, although they might have sent it through, we still realize that we can get this thing overturned and get it done. We can change the course and the direction of where we're going. But the only way that evil can prevail is when good people do nothing. We're determined not to be part of that do-nothingness. So no matter whether it's 3 degrees below zero or 98 degrees, you're going to find those that care about this issue, and those that care about our country, and those that care about our rights, you're going to find them out here. You're going to find them out here having these conversations. You're going to find them in their communities, making sure they fight against them and doing all we can to turn the road down the direction back to what our founding fathers had in mind. That is why I made a decision to run for governor. Because I believe that whether you're in that house or in a house in Baltimore City, an apartment in Montgomery County or Western Shore, or on a farm on the eastern of Western Maryland or a farm on the Eastern Shore, your rights ought to be protected here in the state of Maryland. This is your state. It's your country. Now, as a Marine officer, I'll be the first one to tell you, no one is going to walk, regardless of that House bill by that Delegate Conaway, no one's going to walk into my home and tell me I need to retreat first before I can protect my rights of my family. Amen. I don't know about you, but I'm just telling you, it's not going to happen. We've got some more words going to come up about that later. I don't want to ruin that. But all of this, in my opinion, has been a systematic way, one step at a time, to take more and more and more of our freedoms away from us. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to let partisan politics I'm not going to let somebody's idea of what they want their country or state to become to alter and change what I know I raise my right hand to swear to defend and protect. And that is the Constitution of the United States. Now, in the first 12 days of January, Baltimore City saw 14 murders. Did anybody catch that?
Yes, sir.
14 murders in the first 12 days in Baltimore City. One of the first questions I wanted to ask the governor, and I hope he's home, maybe having dinner, how good is that bill working for you? That's all I want to know. Not a whole lot of people are bringing anything up about that either. Isn't that something? Now, I know Perry Hall was tragic. I know what happened, the western part of our country was tragic. But what's going on in Baltimore City is tragic every day. I made this comment, Brian. I made this comment once before in front of an audience. What happens across our country, in many urban centers across our country, is nothing less than 9/11 once every 3 months. We lose 1,500 to 2,000 African Americans in urban centers every year across the country. And bills like this don't help. They only hurt. I declare, when I read that in the Sun and in the Post, and of course they silenced it since then, I wanted to ask somebody, where's Al Sharpton? Where's Jackson? I know it's so uncomfortable, I'll say it. Where's O'Malley?
There you go.
Where's Brown? Oh, but then I remember, Delegate Smeal, there's no political or financial upgrade or upswing to get involved into it. There's no political capital, there's no financial capital, so you won't find them there. Instead, they find places and opportunities to write bills that at the end of the day do nothing but hurt law-abiding citizens. Here's what I say to that: enough is enough. I pledge to you, number one, if I am honored enough to serve you as your governor, within our first tour of our administration, we will put this bill before a referendum. We will send this bill back to Maryland, and we will let the people decide. And I guarantee you, 50+1% of Marylanders will overturn this bill.
All right.
And I want any and every person running for governor in the state of Maryland to say the same thing. Hold them accountable. Make sure those words come out of their mouth. We don't have to stand for this unless we want to. This is what we mean by a new way forward. We want to take bold, common sense ideas and reintroduce those into Maryland. We want our farmers to know, our watermen, our businessmen, our teachers, every facet of our society to know that your Constitution still works for you. And this is still a government of the people and by the people. And we are held accountable to you and not the other way around. The tyrannical and aristocrat ideas and mindsets that exist in this place are over. It's time for your government to be held accountable. I, for one, to ensure that happens. And every time I get the opportunity, I'm going to thank you for being able to serve you. I'm going to be held accountable for what you asked me to do. And I will do nothing less than, number one, defend your Constitution. Ensure your tax dollars are sent back home to you if we don't spend them. And to make sure we have external audits as often as possible to make sure that any bill, and I mean any bill with the tax included in it, is audited quarterly, if not annually, to make sure the tax dollars are going where they're supposed to go. But today, this is what we celebrate. This is what we honor. We celebrate the opportunity to turn things around, to reverse this trend, specifically when it comes to our Second Amendment. Now, I'm sure you do as well, but I carry a copy of my Constitution with me to help remind me of what I raised my right hand to defend. Because about 17 years ago, I raised my right hand, and I made a decision. I swore I would defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I enter into this service to run for you as your governor, and I'm going to defend the same things. The enemies to me, however, they're not Democrat or Republican. They're not white, they're not black, they're not male, they're not female. They're every issue and every policy and every regulation and every law that seeks to strip our freedoms away from us. I'm waging war against it. We're going to win this year, not just in June, but in November. And we're going to restore to Maryland their government. Welcome to having your government present it right back to you. I'm Charles Lawler. I'm grateful to be here. I'm running to be your governor here in 2014.
Next on our list of celebrated speakers is Miss Carol Owen Lovelace out of Ellicott City, Columbia, and she has a few words she'd like to share.
Well, good afternoon. So how many of you were here last year doing the same thing in the cold? And so here we are again. We came out, we had signs, we rallied. Some of us stayed till 3 and 4 in the morning. We testified before both houses, we emailed, we visited the senators and the delegates, and what happened? Now we have what used to be Senate Bill 281 is the law of Maryland. They did what they wanted to do. We fought the good fight, but it wasn't enough. We have to change the number of liberty-minded folks that sit in these houses. We have one of the mightiest fighters here today, Delegate Schmiegel, who's our hero, but we need more people there. So I'm going to talk to you a little differently today. You're going to hear some great speeches. Charles and Alex will always light your fire with what they have to say, but I'm going to ask you, what are you doing to help? I know there's some candidates here today. Ask your candidate, or a candidate that you've heard of or somebody can refer you to, what you can do to help them. Whether it's contribute to their campaign or knock on doors or just ask them what you can do to help. Because unless we change the numbers of people that are in there, it's going to be an uphill battle. So ask those people what you can do. And when you're out there talking, you know, there's a lot of people out there that just don't think like we do. We don't get it, but it's the truth. So when you're talking to people and maybe they think an AR-15 is a big scary machine gun that shoots 1,000 bullets a second, maybe talking about taking it from your cold dead hands isn't the way you ought to approach them. Maybe they don't know anything about a gun. Maybe gun isn't even the issue that you should talk to them about. Maybe they're just mad about the rain tax. But if you need to get them excited, you need to get them out to the polls to vote, you need to get them to get excited and motivated about what's happening here in Annapolis and Washington. So that's my message to you today, is to get involved, and probably each of you are. If you haven't written a check to your candidate, I encourage you to do so. Money wins elections. That's all there is to it. Money in the ground game. So be willing to do those things, and if there's somebody here today that you see that's in your district, I would like all the candidates just to raise their hand and wave. So that's awesome. There's a lot of people here. So thank you for the time and effort that you put into it. We appreciate that. And we certainly appreciate you coming out in the cold. It's just the beginning. We've got 3 more months of session. And I just encourage you, don't give up. Keep the good fight. Thank you.
Our next speaker needs a little introduction, although we are getting a little redundant because perhaps the Marines are overrepresented today. But then again, in the forefront of every challenge and every battle, it has been the Marines who have carried the day, often and over again. So without further ado, Delegate Michael Schmiegel.
Thank you very much. Well, what I'm going to ask all of you to do when you come down this year and you contact people is, let's start with those of us who are down here and say we voted correctly. It's not enough just to vote correctly. It's time that you make a decision whether you're going to put your toes on the line and stand side by side with those of us who are standing up and defending the Constitution. Are you going to put your toes on the line, or are you going to toe the line? We don't need any more people who are down here and just say that pressing the green button is enough. You got to stand up, you got to make the argument, and you got to take it to them. There's many times I'm standing up there and I'm pointing at the governor and I'm calling him a tyrant. I'm saying the Liberty Tree is parched, and I'm expecting others to stand up there and go after him, and they'll press the green button, but they won't make that speech. And all of you who are candidates here and you're running for governor, take it to those other candidates who are running for governor. People are afraid. I was thrilled when I just heard Charles mention the Constitution. You know how often people are afraid to mention the Constitution? Many of you were here a few years ago, when we went in front on the 10th Amendment argument. We had a rally here at night. We pointed up the governor, and we were talking about the 10th Amendment. And when they went into the Senate building, one of the senators actually looked out and said, I don't want to be hearing nothing about no Constitution here today. Absolutely. And it was appalling. So go to those who say that they voted right. And also ask them how they voted on those amendments. Because that's a way you find out whether or not they really care about the Second Amendment, is how they can vote no on every amendment that's going to improve SB 281. Then they figure out how many votes they need to pass the bill, and they give a pass to some of them and say, okay, you can go ahead now and vote for the bill and go back and tell people that you were for it. Well, you look at it and you'll find out many of them voted against good amendments. Now, you say, how do I take on these people who were against it? And there's a very effective method we used last year. Go get their list of donors, and you look at who donated to them. And we found out when we started making calls to the donors, they had no idea that the people they were giving money to were against them. One man I could recall said, wait a minute, he's a car dealer. I gave over $40,000 last year to these candidates, and I'm a life member of the NRA. I'm not going to give to them again. So then when you find out that their donors are cutting them off because of these votes, that's a very effective tool. And then you call them, we had a union group, firemen, who turned around and found out that the person they were supporting was against the Second Amendment. When they found out, they said, we're going to take away our support. So those lists are all available online. You can find out who's giving money to these candidates, call them, and let them know, I'm not going to buy your product. I'm not going to shop in your store. And then that really is an effective way of getting them to call them up and say, wait a minute, why am I getting calls about your bad vote on the Second Amendment? So there are things we can do. This session, so you know, we're taking it to them. We're going to, I've got a bill in to repeal SB 281. Don't know that that's going to go anywhere, but we got many bills in, at least 10, that are going to fix small parts of it. The most outrageous thing that's happened is when this legislature sits down and says, we're not going to allow there to be a firing component because we don't want a proficiency component, and we're going to take that out. And we give Delegate McDermott an amendment, he puts it in, and they say, we're going to take out of this bill any firing component. And it's taken out. State police come in here, violate the separation of powers of the government. We're the legislative branch. We set policy. The state police are under the executive branch. They are to implement the policy we set. And I also sit on the AELR hearing. So when anytime they set up regulations that are to implement the laws that we pass, they have to come before us. And I can't believe that they actually had the audacity to come up and say, we're going to put back in the firing component. The state police put it back in. There is nothing more scary than the armed branch of government that is supposed to enforce the laws, deciding what laws they will create. They created this. And I stood up and I pointed and said shame on every one of those who call themselves constitutional lawyers who are sitting up there for allowing this branch of government, the legislative branch, who sets policy, to abrogate their authority to an agency. To let that agency come in and say, guess what? We're going to override you. We think it's better to require this. That's dangerous. The state police have done a number of dangerous things. Go to delegatemike.com, I put them up there, and I point them out, and I call them out. When they came out and we said, they're going to interpret the portion of the bill that we wrote that we didn't write. Actually, that's another thing. Did you know that the night before SB 281 came out, that the Democrats and Republicans in the judiciary had come to an agreement that we were going to set up a task force to study it? That we, in fact, were going to take the Handgun Roster Review Board and turn it into an Assault Weapons Review Board. And that we were going to have a ban based on how many, what they consider to be characteristics of an assault weapon were on a firearm. And that's the bill that we went to bed on a Friday night with. When we woke up Saturday morning, the little progressive elves had got together and created an entirely new bill and handed it to the committee, and we stood there and said, where did this come from? This is not what we agreed to. So for all the weeks that we put in crafting an agreement on what would be a bipartisan agreement, they just totally eviscerated it and put in their own bill. They said, the heck with the process, the heck with everything that we had done with regards to having hearings, everybody who came down here, and they put out what they wanted. We stood and we argued against it and said it should not happen. Then what happens is, in that, the state police when we say if a firearm is purchased before October 1st, and you send off, you got a receipt, then that firearm is going to be considered to be grandfathered in, and you can receive it. It might take a year, whatever, to get it back to you. Minutes before we were going to vote on the floor, they pulled us off the floor, took us down to the new Senate chamber, and they tried to change that. They wanted to say, when you get your 77R back, and that's signed, that's when it counts. No, because you got to wait for the serial number of the firearm to come back before you can get your 77R filled out. So everybody who had ordered and had put those orders out would not be able to get those firearms. So it clearly said, and the intent was that any firearm ordered before October 1st, we'd be able to keep. What happened? They come back and say, well, we're interpreting that to mean you can get your AR-15, you can get your long arms, long guns, but you may not get the little 22 or any other handgun because that wasn't what was written. They interpreted that way. Then they realized the Supreme Court has said you can't differentiate between two types of firearms. You can't make that differentiation, especially if they're in prevailing public use. So if those firearms are used like a .45, you can't differentiate between the AR-15. So what did they decide? They didn't change their interpretation. They didn't get an attorney general opinion. The state police took the unprecedented position of publicly stating, ignore the law. We're okay with that. If you're going to the firearms dealer, ignore the law and get your firearm. Firearms dealer, go ahead and ignore the law and give the firearm. All that did was place every single law-abiding citizen in a position of potentially being a criminal down the road. Now, right now, they just came out with a statistic, and they're showing 50,000 people got their firearms waiting a 7-day waiting period. Out of that 50,000, about 200 turned out to not be supposed to have a firearm. I asked how many of that 200 did you go out and arrest? How many of them did you go out and charge? And it turns out, well, about 60 of them, delegate. So what about the other 140? Were they just people who maybe got a PBJ and the judge said it doesn't count? Or they got some sort of a sentence where the lawyer told them, you got this PBJ, you're going to go away, you're okay? And you turned around and said, well, wait, you answered the question wrong? And they said, yeah, probably. So because of a paperwork, they're going to say that 140 of those people somehow should not have had the firearm, but they're not going after them. So out of the 60 that they say that they legitimately should not have got a firearm, one person, one out of 50,000, took the firearm and used it to hijack a car in Baltimore City. So I asked about his past. Oh yes, of course 5 years ago he was arrested for armed assault. I said, well, why didn't you do anything? Well, he was a juvenile. I said, well, don't you have the right to take juveniles and try them as adults if they're using armed firearms or whatever in the course of assault? Yeah, yes. So you made a decision not to prosecute them. You made a decision not to get these things done in time. And now there's a bill in to say the answer to one person in 50,000 getting their firearm is to now take away and say that nobody gets their 7-day waiting period. You have to wait till the state police are done. Absolutely unconscionable and wrong. I stood on the floor of the House of Delegates and I said, and you can look at it, that I will stand side by side with each and every citizen and say that we're going to nullify any law that is unconstitutional. And if they try to pass a law like that, I will stand with you side by side and say no, it's unconstitutional, and we will nullify that law.
Yeah.
We have many sheriffs in this so far who are nullifying and saying we will not enforce SB 281 because it's unconstitutional. And if your sheriff is one of them, or you know a sheriff is one of them, write them and tell them thank you for standing up to the Constitution. The problem down here is too many of these people think that they owe their allegiance to either the governor or to their party. They owe their allegiance to the Constitution, and it should not be a dirty word. It's something they should read, they should know, and they should understand. Thank you for letting me come down here and speak to you today. I would ask that all of you come out February 4th. I'm having a rally. We're going to have thousands of people down here. We're going to take it to them. We're going to go and see them. Don't give up. This isn't over. SB 281 is unconstitutional. Many aspects of it are unconstitutional. And we're going to stand up and we're going to fight this every step of the way, every day. Thank you very much.
The delegate brings a good point. This isn't about just this rally today. It isn't about the rally in February. It's about your presence every day, on the phone, email, conversations, or in person with your delegates and your senators. Because your presence doesn't count unless you're present. I'd like to introduce Another fine candidate. A woman about little can be said because she's shy.
Oh, very sure.
Terry Lynn McGraw out of Glen Burnie, and one of your delegates for a new district in this wonderful house.
Thank you. I was born in Maryland, and I've been in Maryland all my life, and I've spent a lot of time in Annapolis last year during this gun bill with the governor, and I have a few questions that I've been asking this whole time. HQL, what did it do? What did it do to make us get an HQL? It did nothing. It did nothing but cost us money for fingerprints and paperwork, and it did nothing. Carry permit. A business person can get a carry permit if they have money that they're taking to the bank, or if they have jewelry that they're taking to a safe deposit box, or if they're transporting for their business. But you and me, a regular citizen, we have to have a good and substantial reason, and the state police makes that decision for us. So we don't have the luxury, they call it, to protect ourselves, because we can't get a carry permit in Maryland. I can carry my gun in 31 states around here, but I can't carry it in the state that I live in, that I grew up in, that I was born in. Liberals don't understand. They don't understand that you can't have it both ways. You can't let someone out of jail, like Delegate Schmeigel was just saying, for a gun crime, and then punish us law-abiding citizens for it later. It doesn't work that way. This is what ignites my passions. Being from here all my life, living in Maryland, abiding by all the laws, and not being able to exercise my rights. Having said that, not only am I running for state delegate in District 31A, my own neighborhood, my own communities, I'm also the chapter leader for the Well-Armed Woman here in Maryland, in Central Maryland. Some of my members are here today. Thank you for your support. It's an organization, it's volunteer, it's not a paying job, but it's something that I'm passionate about because women get things done. No offense to the guys, because guys do too. But we go out there and we let women understand what firearms are, what training is. We help them get their training. We help them overcome their fears if they have some regarding firearms. Really, the fear of guns for most people is not understanding. It's not understanding. So what I do and what I'm passionate about is helping people understand and get the right training and overcome their fears and be able to, actively, avidly shoot their firearm responsibly, put it away responsibly, and be a law-abiding citizen that can handle their firearm and have privileges and exercise their rights. It's about our rights. That's why I'm running for delegate, and that's why I do the Well-Armed Woman. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. McGraw. I think we have another excellent candidate for replacing some of the ones who aren't listening. Our next speaker comes to you directly from the House of Corrections, a subject matter expert on what it really means to control a gun. Kasim?
Good afternoon. My name is Kasim Bailey. I work for the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. I'm a correctional officer I'm also a firearms instructor. A lot of people don't know the difference between gun control and firearm safety. Does anybody in the crowd know what the difference between gun control and firearm safety is?
Yes.
What is it?
Firearm safety is making sure that you don't hurt anybody that's not supposed to get hurt.
Right.
Gun control is about control of the people.
Right. Okay, so first let me tell you about myself. I'm from New York. I came in here in 01. Never dealt with a firearm until I started working with the Division of Corrections. While I was working there, they sent me to train how to shoot a weapon. Learn how to shoot a weapon. I'm good. I'm not the best, but I'm good. I am a firearms instructor now for the Division of Corrections. I have experienced some ignorant people. While I'm in uniform carrying my weapon, I went to the dentist's office the other day. the girl says to me, and I quote, "As long as the gun doesn't go off, I'm fine." So I said to her, "The gun can only go off if I pick up the weapon and I fire the weapon." So she looked at me. I said to her, "When you drive your vehicle, do you have control of your vehicle?" She says, "Yes." So I'm like, "Okay, so while you're driving, does it automatically crash?" She says, "No." So I'm like, "Okay, so if the weapon's in my holster, how's the weapon going to fire by itself?" She just looked at me. I said, "Have you ever shot a weapon before?" She told me no. Me being a firearms instructor, I offered her my services to teach her how to shoot a firearm. I did not get to teach her yet because she has not called yet. But firearms is very important to me, and I'm pretty sure it's important to you guys because you're out in 35-degree weather on a Sunday afternoon. So I don't know what kind of rules and regulations that they're trying to do for firearms for citizens to carry a firearm. I carry a firearm, and the only reason why I'm able to carry a firearm concealed is because I'm a corrections officer. It should not take for me to be a corrections officer or a small business owner to be able to carry a weapon. We should be able to protect ourselves and our families. Thank you.
How's everybody? My name is Tom Wilson. I'm running for Senate in District 35. A little bit of history about myself. 25 years ago, a younger man, I really started studying American history. I grew up in public schools and grew up in Wilmington and really didn't get passionate about where our nation was going until I really started studying history, started studying the Founding Fathers, our documents, Constitution, Bill of Rights. I started reading a lot of the writings of the founders of this country. I studied the writings of the wives of the founders. I studied, a lot of the influential people leading up to that. And I started looking around in this nation, even back then, and I thought, wow, somebody really is not, following the rules here. Government seems to be at a loss. And what I prepared today is I want to go through a little bit and speak about who we are as a people, about patriots. This is something I'm passionate about. I sat, like many of you, last year, and I looked at what the legislature in Maryland was doing, and I really saw a severe disconnect with what the legislature was doing here. And like many of you, I kind of reached my last straw. Many years ago, I ran for public office, local, was elected, backed away to raise my children for a few years, and decided to step back into it again. I am very passionate about many issues. I'm very passionate about the Constitution, the founding documents, and I think that it really needs to be restored and fought for. So what I have here is our rights are not given to us by our founding documents, and this is something we need to understand. Our rights existed long before America ever became a nation. These God-given rights and liberties are what drove early settlers to America and away from the oppression and tyranny, despite many hardships that they faced. It is what drives us to secure and protect these same freedoms today. Many throughout history have sacrificed greatly to preserve our freedoms and our liberties. One of my favorites is John Quincy Adams once stated, and I quote that maybe gets lost in history. He says, "Posterity, us, you will never know how much it has cost my generation to preserve your freedoms. I hope you will make good use of it." And that quote kind of sinks well with me. It's like, what have I done? What have I done to step up to the plate to preserve and extend the sacrifices that the founding fathers of this nation have done? We look at what's going on in this state, and it seems like that there isn't enough opposition to what's happening. It says government cannot grant nor take away that which it never bestowed. Our founders, in the penning of the documents, only enumerated or put into writing these rights that a free people in the nation enjoy. Rights that are never to be surrendered, but are often taken by men wielding power with suspect motives. The right to bear arms is just one right that has been trampled throughout history by tyrants and thieves. The right is targeted because it is the teeth of freedom and the last defense of a free people. The Second Amendment comprises of two components: the right of self-defense and the right of revolution. Both of these rights are secured by the right to bear arms. But why the word arms? And this is something that's been a debate. Pierce Morgan, right next to musket. So it says, but why the word arms? The founding fathers, in their foresight, knew that these two components, the right of revolution and self-defense, are part of man's everlasting rights. When they chose the general term of arms instead of muskets, they knew that future generations, us, would need weapons of their own equivalent to their government should government ever try to strip them of these God-given rights, and the government decides to serve themselves rather than serve the people. When I say fellow patriots, it's time for our generation to place a mark in history as a defense of liberty so future generations may live in peace as we have. We must not only defend our rights, but at this point we must seek to restore them. Listed in Maryland's Declaration of Rights, and this is one of the documents that I study often, we see a deep understanding from our founders that the true power is granted by providence of God and a self-governing people. And Article 6 states that all persons invested in the legislature, executive powers of government, are the trustees of the public, and such accountable for their conduct, whenever the ends of government are perverted, and public liberty manifestly endangered, and all other means of regress are ineffectual, the people may and have right to reform the old, establish a new government. And it says here, very poignantly, the doctrine of non-resistance to arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. Our founders understood this, that we do need to fight back. Now we have the ability to go to the ballot box and to change this state. It says the Maryland legislature has lost touch with our founding principles. They are no longer the public servants, but feel that they are the public masters. They no longer work to secure the freedoms that they took an oath to defend, but have decided to serve another master. To legislate beyond the boundaries granted to them is a violation of their oath and a violation of rights granted to man from God that is old as time itself. Our rights are non-negotiable. They are non-negotiable to the tyrant. They are also non-negotiable by the patriot. We have no choice in our duty to preserve and to protect our God-given rights. Neither side has power to abridge these rights. To negotiate a resolve with an unconstitutional law only serves to empower it, and the only power an unconstitutional law can obtain is by our obedience or acknowledgement. We as free citizens are never to face evil defenseless. Maryland must comply with the natural rights of a free people and become a carry state, and to restore our God-given liberties to bear arms. What part of shall not infringe did they not understand? My fellow patriots, the evidence is laid out before us. This task falls at our feet and to our watch. Will you step to the front line as many patriots in history? Will you fight the battle to preserve for future generations the freedoms that we have enjoyed? I would have that we would not face this in our time. But once again, it is time to place fear in the hearts of the tyrants. The liberties of our country, the freedoms of our civil constitutions, worth defending at all hazards. It is our duty to defend them against all attacks. We have received them as a fair inheritance from our worthy ancestors. They purchased them with us with toil and danger and expense and treasure of blood. It will bring a mark of everlasting infamy on the present generation, enlightened as it is, if we should suffer them to be wrestled from us by violence without struggle, or be cheated out of them by the artifices of designing men. And that was a quote from Samuel Adams, one of my favorite patriots. And what do I ask? I am passionate about this. What do I ask? I desire two things for you, my fellow patriots. Allow me to serve you as a public servant in the Senate District 35, and I wish you to form ranks with me. I require your time and your services not just to get elected, but to fight this battle afterwards. The liberal senators and delegates, they need to find a new state. They need to know that they're not welcome here. I agree with Mike. We need to start finding out who their donors are. We need to really start focusing this. And I want to list you with one thing. It's from Samuel Adams. If ever a time should come when vain and aspiring men shall possess the highest seats in government, our country will stand in need of its experienced patriots to prevent its ruin. We need to go after this, and we need to make it happen. And it can happen. We need to get into the communities. And something that I have done, and I would challenge all of you to do that are pro-Second Amendment and pro-rights, take somebody to the shooting range. I mean, take them out there and show them how to enjoy and have fun. And a lot of times what happens is that, like this gentleman said here, a person never fired a firearm in their life, but they're dead set against it. Do not talk politics. Take and invite somebody out. Hey, we're going to have a fun day at the range. Supply the weapon, supply the gun, go through the safety. Make sure you get them all up to speed on what we do as people who enjoy the firearms. Take them to the range and have an enjoyable day. We can start changing people's opinions, and we can start changing people by start to get involved with those that are in these communities. This is a cultural battle that we're fighting, people, and we need to start getting into those communities and start changing the hearts and minds and thoughts of every person one at a time. We all have neighbors. We all have people that we know. How many of us have invited some of our neighbors or some of the people at work to go to the range with us for a day? Start talking. Good. Not many. Not many. But we need to start doing that. We need to start reaching into our communities and start changing minds and start changing hearts. Start forming alliances and start challenging some of these liberal ideas. Like I said, I grew up in the city, and a lot of times people are really not challenged in their ideology. And when I moved out of the city down here, I started to look at things, and that's when I started really making a change. You know, that's when I started seeing a difference. And I challenge all of you to do that. Start interjecting and getting into your communities, finding those candidates that need support, that really stand up for the rights and understand where they come from, and start getting involved in your communities. Start making a difference, and start inviting people out and taking them to the range and doing things with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for coming out and joining with us. On an administrative note, I have one or two other speakers that are on my list that I haven't seen in the crowd, so if you're here because we were invited you and I haven't talked to you yet, please check in with me, because it's hard to put you in the lineup if I haven't found you in the crowd yet. Our next speaker, Mr. Jimmy Wilson. He may be our youngest that we've brought before you today, but he is our future. Mr. Jimmy Wilson.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see all of you out here today to support the Second Amendment and the Constitution as a whole. My name is Jimmy Williams. I'm a candidate for delegate in District 13 in Howard County. I'm a University of Maryland student, and I'm a member of the Rifle and Pistol Club at the University of Maryland. When I was growing up, my father made sure to teach me about the rights and principles contained in our nation's two most important documents. That's the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The right to defend one's life and property. The right to keep what you've worked hard to earn. My dad taught me that you need to fight hard to protect your rights and freedoms every day to make sure that no one can ever infringe upon them. And although my dad is unfortunately no longer with us, the lessons he taught me still ring true to this very day. I'm running for state delegate because in Maryland, I see a state where spending is out of control, where citizens and businesses are overtaxed and overregulated, and where our constitutionally protected rights and freedoms are under fire. Over the last 7 years, Annapolis has increased taxes and fees over 70 times on you and me. That's threatening our economic freedom. You know, you can say we're free in this country, but if 40% of what you earn is going to taxes, you're only economically free 60% of the time. That's got to change. You know, we got the rain tax, the gas tax, the flush tax, toll increases across the state. We've gotten higher vehicle titling and registration fees. You name it, Governor O'Malley, and that's spelled O-W-E, Governor O'Malley and his allies in the General Assembly have probably taxed it. This tax, spend, and tax some more policy has driven thousands of people and businesses out of our state as the cost of living and doing business in the state continues to skyrocket. And apparently it's still not enough, because this year we face a $500 million deficit as we have the legislature go back into session. If elected delegate, I will support legislation that will reduce waste in Annapolis and promote fiscal efficiency with your tax dollars. I support a cut in personal income taxes, including the proposal this year by the Republican caucus to cut taxes by 10% over the next 3 years. And I'm going to support legislation that's going to make us a business-friendly state again, to make sure that we can bring investment and jobs back to this state. Despite repeated Supreme Court rulings that affirm our right to bear arms, with Senate Bill 281, Annapolis is telling law-abiding gun owners, all of you, myself, that we can't own certain guns because they look dangerous, while doing nothing to reduce gun violence and the murder rate, or to prevent criminals from obtaining guns or selling them illegally. Despite Supreme Court precedent that goes all the way back to the abolishment of the poll tax, which makes it illegal to have to pay to exercise a constitutionally protected right, we have to pay now here for fingerprinting and for a handgun qualification license if we want to own a handgun. SB 281 is a poorly conceived, knee-jerk reaction to a national tragedy that does nothing to actually get guns off the streets and out of the hands of criminals. And that's the problem we have. It's not law-abiding gun owners, it's criminals with guns. SB 281 does nothing to address that. The murder rate in Baltimore City that Charles Lala touched on earlier today, all the murders so far, 14 murders in the first 12 days, that's just further proof that gun laws do nothing to reduce crime and the murder rate. We need to repeal SB 281. I support Delegate Smiegel's bill, and I'm going to work hard with him and the rest of the Republican caucus to make sure we get stuff done to roll back the draconian regulations that SB 281 puts on us, because it helps no one and it hurts us, the law-abiding gun owners. One of the tenets of limited government is the principle of local autonomy. Our counties need to have more control over what happens within their borders. But sadly, Annapolis doesn't let that happen. When the EPA told Maryland to jump, Annapolis asked, how high? And passed the rain tax. Not only is this tax ridiculous because rainwater that falls on your roofs and driveways is not a pollutant, it flies in the face of equal protection by only requiring residents of certain counties to pay it. Annapolis left the counties to determine how to best collect this tax, but when Frederick, Harford, and Carroll counties dared to refuse to burden their citizens with yet another tax, the state responded by threatening to fine them thousands of dollars per day. It is inexcusable for a state government to threaten and order around and intimidate our counties in this fashion. And while Annapolis sets taxes on square footage, our state still allows the sale of millions of tons of excessive fertilizer each year. Here's an idea. Why not limit the fertilizer to reduce nutrient runoff into the bay instead of taxing the rainwater that falls on our homes? In a similar fashion, Annapolis is preventing our western counties from developing energy resources within their borders, saying the issue needs even more study. We've seen them study the state pension issue. We know how well that's gone. Developing these resources would create an economic boom for these counties and the state, as well as spur job creation. Yet our western counties are being prevented by the state capital from making the decision of how to best develop the resources they have within their borders, and that's not right. As a delegate, I'm going to move immediately to make sure that we can give our counties the right to develop what is within their borders. We need to, if they want to develop the energy, let's let them develop it. You know, with everything going on in our state right now, it could be easy to just want to pack up and leave. I'd be lying to you if I hadn't said I hadn't thought about how cool it might be to move to Texas or South Carolina, states like that. But Maryland is my home. And like all of you gathered here today, I'm not ready to surrender my home. And I'm not ready to quit. I'm not ready to give up. I'm here to fight alongside each and every one of you. As you all know, we have a critical election coming up in 10 months. 2014 is our chance to send a strong message to the politicians that have put us where we are today and to take Maryland back. I thank you all for the chance to come out and speak today. I'll see you all at the February 4th rally as well. God bless you all, God bless Maryland, and God bless the United States.
Our next speaker leaves me a little to introduce him because he gave me a little to work with. But Brian Faith, another candidate who has some words to say about his opinion, his ideas, and his vision for the future of the state.
Thank you. How y'all doing? I'm going to be very brief. I'm not a public speaker. I don't have much experience at it, but I'm just here to say, gun control does nothing to control guns. We need law-abiding representatives in our legislature to take care of this problem for us. This is all about government overreach in almost every aspect of our lives. We need to start holding these politicians not only accountable for what they're doing legislatively, but for what they're doing criminally and stepping on our rights and taking our rights away from us. We're being blamed for what's wrong with society, and not them. They're not being blamed for what they contribute to the ills of society. And we got to start really holding these people accountable. The reason I got involved in this race, and I've been getting into elections, because people need to know what's really going on in this state with the culture of corruption. It's infiltrated our local boards, and they've done this by removing the citizen advisory boards away from everything. This legislation would have probably never even reached the floor for a vote had the community associations been allowed to vet it first. So what we're doing is we're trying to gain access to the grand jury, which they've attempted to halt us from many times, and they're denying us access to it. But that's our right to petition the grand jury to get these people indicted for what they're doing and while they're stealing our money and the things that are just going on that's wrong. I followed up some pretty good speakers. Charles is out of sight. Delegate Schmiegel, love that guy. I need to talk to him some more and get some advice on what I can do about my public speaking. But Article 6 in the Declaration of Rights, and if I'm echoing what Mr. Wilson said, I was doing a little reading up on some things last night, and this came across to me that the doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. What they're doing is they're destroying that, and we're not really saying, there's not a whole outcry about it. We should be standing up ready to revolt against this kind of thing. We've revolted for much less. So, I'm developing what I'm doing now. It's not going to be what I'm going to do once I'm in office. It's what I'm doing now to make sure that we retain the rights that we have. Airplanes kill people every day, but they're not outlawing airplanes. And they're not doing much about terrorism. So we're going to have to take it in our own hands. And, this gun thing, this is a rite of passage in families. Fathers hand their guns down to their sons, and to their sons, it's when their sons feel like they're men. Now, I don't own a gun. I've never shot a gun. But I think everybody's got a right to defend themselves. And like I said in my debate, I'm not going to back off of the statement that you should carry. Because if people know you got a gun on you, they're less likely to commit a crime against you. And I believe that's true. So we got to be less about taking the rights from the people and giving them our rights back. And I'm offended by it all. I've testified in front of committees and different hearings about, the way we're disregarding people. And this fight is nothing more than, it's all about money. Once they say they're going to take guns, then, the money starts flooding in to pay the lawyers that are going to argue the court cases in front of the court. And, we got to stop spending that money on this kind of stuff. We can put this on the back burner, take it up later on, let them take it up as many times as they want. But right now, we got to get the rights back to the people, start feeding some people, start getting some people into some homes, and start giving the citizens, us, a relief from these relentless taxes, the rain tax, the flush tax. David Craig, one of the other candidates, brought up the sunshine tax, which that's probably coming. So we really got to get down. I'm out here to speak just because, we're not standing up. So I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to do what I got to do. Hopefully I improve my public speaking abilities and be able to get my points across a little bit better. But, we just got to be more diligent about our rights and elect people that are going to do the work for us, not against us. I don't know when it's became us against them mentality, but we got to control it. We got to get it under control somehow, or else if we don't, what's going to happen is going to be much worse than what we think it is. People are going to revolt, and it's going to cause us problems. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. I'm cold. I'm going to get done here. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. In the course of putting together this rally today and assembling speakers, I put out feelers to a number of people on both sides of the aisle. And now, I'd like to introduce one of the rarest creatures in this atmosphere, a Democrat in favor of constitutional rights, Mr. Joseph Delizio.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Mike said, I am a Democrat, so just don't start throwing things at me. All right, it's too cold and I can't move. First of all, I just want to point out that there's someone peeking through the window in the governor's mansion listening to us. So how you doing? Secondly, I want to ask one question. How many here, besides Delegate Smeagol, Charles Law is gone, and myself, are United States veterans? Raise your hand if you're a veteran. Very good. Give me a round of applause. Now, when I was younger, I enlisted in the United States Army. When I went to the recruiter, he asked me why I wanted to join. And I gave him the honest answer at the time. I want to shoot stuff. And he told me to come back when I grew up. So after my grandfather and I talked, well, he talked, I listened. I went back to the recruiter and told him that after I talked to my grandfather and he told me, or his family's long history in the military, I wanted to make him proud. So when I enlisted, my Drill Sergeant Davis, told me one thing. The oath you took, if you ever break it, I will put my boot so far up here, you won't be able to sit down. And I have carried that the rest of my life. Now last session I was here for 90 days, just about 90 days. I got to know Delegate Smeagol, I got to know more delegates, I even saw that guy a couple times. And one thing I've noticed about the Republicans in Annapolis, they don't care who you are, they don't care what position you hold, they don't care if you're white, you're black, you're short, you're tall, you're gay, you're straight. If you're an American citizen, they will fight for your rights. Now I've talked to Senator Mike Miller. And he knows how to play a game. But when it comes to the constitutional rights of each and every one of you, it's not a game. It's not. It's very serious. That's why whenever I leave my house, I have the United States Constitution that Ms. Wilhensky gave me. And also when I leave my house, I carry, I'll call it God's Constitution, the Holy Bible. I carry this for one reason. Because what God ordained in this helped the Founding Fathers write this. Now last December I took it a step further. I became an ordained minister. And I'm a Democrat, go figure. I became an ordained minister because while I'm fighting in Annapolis, now I'm not an elected official, but while I'm fighting in Annapolis with my friend Preston, Delegate Smeagol, Senator Nancy Jacobs, I'm also fighting for our rights for free religion. We've seen from Barack Hussein Obama, probably can't say that, but oh well, from Barack Hussein Obama, we can't pray in schools. We can't pray in public settings. That's wrong. That's wrong. Then, after he does that, he attacks our Second Amendment right. And I distinctly remember Barack Obama saying these words, "If I'm elected president, I will not come after your guns." That's what he said in 2008 when he was running against Senator McCain. As we all know, that wasn't truthful. People like Barack Obama and Martin O'Malley, they're tyrants. They don't care what you want, they don't care what you like, they push their agenda. And when it comes to this, it is not Democrat, it is not Republican, it is not Libertarian. It is an American issue. Every person here is an American citizen. My family came here from Italy years ago and became legal citizens. They refuse to speak Italian anymore because you're American, you speak English. Simple as that. Amen. If you don't like it, I'm sure there's a boat down here at the dock. Now, about the Constitution and Barack Obama and O'Malley, everyone says the second protects the first. And that's true. But I want to expand upon that. The 15th protects the second. The 15th Amendment guarantees every legal citizen in the United States the right to vote. And if that doesn't make sense, I'll explain it to you. The 15th guarantees that you, and you can vote for people like Delegate Schmiegel, who will fight for you, who will take on tyrants like O'Malley. It also gives you the right to vote against people like O'Malley and Obama. Everyone in that building, that house, these two houses behind me, buildings behind me, work for you, not the other way around. You give them the opportunity to sit in your chair, in your office, in your state capitol, to do one job, what you want them to do. And if they don't do that, come 2014, you can tell them two words: you're fired. One more thing I'd like to point out, two more things actually, is that every American veteran here, every veteran American across the state, across this country, those who are deployed in other countries, God bless them, Governor O'Malley and Barack Obama are slapping them in the face. Every time they attack one of our rights, every veteran who lost a limb, every veteran who died, every veteran who has the emotional scars from post-traumatic stress disorder is slapped in the face by people like the guy in that house. And that's unacceptable. P.S. Not only are they slapping the veterans in the face, they're slapping people like George Washington in the face. They're slapping people like our founding fathers who broke away from the tyranny of Great Britain. When you slap someone like the veterans and the founding fathers in the face, that proves one thing to me. You are not American. You may wear a flag on your lapel, you may live here, but you are not a patriotic American. And if you're not a patriotic American, you have no right to be in that house, and those two buildings behind me. So get out. We all know Barack Obama's motto, yes, we can. He uses that for everything. From when he said he's going to go after the guns, trying to protect people. Then, recently he said, I have a pen and a phone to bypass Congress. Well, guess what? No, you don't, buddy. He uses yes, we can. Myself, Delegate Schmiegel, everyone here is here to tell you, no, you can't. You cannot. We will not allow you to. And if you do, you are fired. We will not allow you in our house. We will not allow you in our Oval Office. Lastly, I want to say one thing. It's very important. On the way here this morning, I was listening to a song by Leonard Skinner. We all know Leonard Skinner, right? I was listening to a song that really put it in perspective for me once again. It's called That Ain't My America. It talks about kids that can't pray in school, $100 tanks of gas. But a line that has stuck with me since I first heard the song years ago, which is why we're all here freezing in front of this man's residence right now. This line goes, in our hands we hold a Bible and a gun. And we ain't afraid of nothing when we're holding either one. So, and I hope Martin O'Malley is peeking through that window right there. I hope it's him. I really do. How you doing, Martin? For you and your friend in D.C., remember that line. We're not afraid of you. We're not afraid of anything you say. We're not afraid of anything you can do. Because this is our country, our state, our grounds, and if you don't like it, get out. Thank you.
Now there's a hard act to follow. Thank you, Mr. Delizio. Spoken with the passion that our Italian brothers are known for. The only ones perhaps more passionate being the Irish. And now I'd like to bring up a man again with a few words to introduce, Mr. Preston Pratt.
Hello. I want to thank everybody for coming out today to be a voice. It's just as important today as it has ever been at any given point in our history to be a voice in our governing process. As we stand here outside the state capitol, surrounded by our offices of our state senators and delegates, it is important that they know that we will hold them accountable for their actions, their votes. It's an election year, and I encourage everybody to support the great candidates we have out here, and Delegate Smeagol, which I believe is one of, if not the greatest supporters of our constitutional rights that we have here in Annapolis. We stand here, in my opinion, not as defenders of just the Second Amendment. We're not gun owners. We are Americans. We're defenders of liberty and freedom and our constitutional rights. And you do not have to own a gun to take up this cause. You don't have to, everybody can do their part. I don't own a gun. I probably never will, but I will defend my right and your right to choose whether or not we want to exercise our Second Amendment rights. We have several bills already introduced dealing with the gun issue. I want to just relay a little experience that I've had just over the last couple months. I was attending a court hearing, and a gentleman was there going through a divorce, and he had a protective order, and he made a post on Facebook. And, we have a bill introduced by, I believe it's Delegate Conaway, that speaks to this issue. And I'll briefly explain how the idea of changing the definition of conviction of a disqualifying crime is already affecting our Second Amendment rights. This gentleman was in court because he made a Facebook post. He basically said to his children, no matter what's going on between your mommy and daddy, I still love you. And he tagged his kids in the post. She took him back to court. So he's standing before the judge, and he's being violated of his protective order. The judge looks to the prosecuting attorney and says, what's the difference? What difference will it make if I list this as a domestic crime? Prosecuting attorney looks at him and says, if this is categorized as a domestic crime, he will lose his Second Amendment rights in the state of Maryland. The judge looks at the gentleman and says, this is a domestic-related crime. So we're really not talking about the issue of, what we're going to qualify as breaking his protective order. The issue is making a Facebook post telling your children, I love you, has stripped him of his Second Amendment right as long as he resides in the state of Maryland. We need more than ever before in our history to remember what the principles were that we founded this country upon. We have to be a voice. We have to remember and remind our elected officials that they work for us. These are our offices. It's our Constitution. It's not up for negotiation. It's not up for discussion. These are our rights, and we will fight for them. It's time to put people first. It's about the people. Each one of you have a voice. Send those letters out, emails. Come up and talk, not just to your representative, but the committee members on the committee that's going to hear these bills. Go to every office and tell them we will be heard. Our voices will be heard. We have a voice. You have a voice. Get your children up here. Get the young kids involved. I started being involved in politics since I was 9 years old. My grandmother sat me on the side of the bed and she told me about Teddy Roosevelt, the Constitution. My father was in the military for 20 years. Everybody. I don't have a college degree. I'm just like everybody else. I have a voice. So as we enter into this session this year, I really want to encourage everybody to come out and join us. Join our delegates and senators, like Delegate Smeagol, Senator Jacobs. We need them. They need to know that we will be here for them, just as they are here for us, for not only just in 90 days, but throughout the year, defending our rights. If we don't defend them, who will? So I challenge everybody to ask yourself the thing that I ask myself every time something comes up. If not me, who? Let our voices be heard, be a voice. Let's put people first. Thank you very much.
What Mr. Pratt admitted was the name of his new political action committee?
Restore Maryland.
Restore Maryland. So if you go on Facebook and look for Restore Maryland.
Thank you. Yes, and this is a good example of how we all can be involved. I'm proud to announce the launch of Restore Maryland, RestoreMaryland.com. It's not a political party. idea that this was founded upon. It's about the people. We're reaching across the aisle. It's everybody who wants to really just strengthen and restore the state of Maryland. We will be empowering the people of Maryland by educating them, doing the outreach, educating them how they can be involved in the political process. We'll support good candidates. Just go to restoremaryland.com, look us up on Facebook, Twitter. We'll be there, and engage with us, and we will fight for you and join you in this fight. Thank you.
Our next speaker from the great county of Baltimore, beautiful community of Essex, Mr. Rick Metzger.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know I won't be long because I know most of you are cold. But I'll tell you, it might be cold outside, but I am boiling, steaming, mad in my bones and in my blood. And if we're not getting fired up over this nonsense that's going on in our state, when will you wake up? Or when will they wake up? And when will this man wake up? And for God's sakes, we need to forget about, let me say it like this. Years ago I heard a sermon, and I'm a minister. They talked about putting a frog in a pot. You put a live frog in a pot, and you just turn the heat up, and eventually that frog won't jump out. That frog just kind of lays low. Ladies and gentlemen, what they're doing is stirring the pot, and they're turning the stove up, and they're inch by inch, stir by stir, taking your rights away. And ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us. I stand here today in the cold, not because I want to be out in the cold. I stand because I'm a Marylander, American, and I stand with you side by side. And I am running for the Maryland State House of Delegates because I have a vision for Maryland, and I joined with the fellow Republicans to stand firm on certain issues that we need to stake our life upon. I stand with all of the people that will cross the aisle. I believe it's time that we need to start. The Democrats years ago had a bill, the Republicans went for it. Republicans had a good bill, the Democrats went for it. Today it's absolute hatred. It's time to stop. Get the job done. I remember several years ago when they started with the tobacco, the cigarettes. I told my wife then, they're inching your Constitution rights away. Now on properties, you can't even go in your car and smoke your own cigarette. I'm a non-smoker, but for goodness sakes, that is taking away your rights. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it's time for people to follow somebody that has a vision. I believe Delegate Smeagol and all these delegates are fighting for this, have a vision. I believe it's time for leadership to stand up, and leadership follows good leadership. I believe it's time that we put people back into office that have some integrity. That's a word you haven't heard in a while, integrity. I remember when I was a young boy, my father used to say when I left this house, you have a name to protect, and that's your name. Folks, we have Maryland to fight for. We have Maryland that's being a laughing stock across this country. When you have a Texas governor say, come on down, we don't tax the rain. Folks, it's enough is enough. My name is Rick Metzger, and I'm running for Maryland State House of Delegates in District 6. And like you, I've got to go to the restroom, so I'm finished. God bless you.
Before we bring up our last two speakers, I've been asked by a few to run a little bit of a question and answer session. So I'd like to bring up Mr. Delegate Smeagol, Mr. Delizio, and myself. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to bring to these three speakers or anyone else, now's your opportunity. Because we're here to hear you.
What can we put up on Facebook to stir the pot in the right direction?
What can we put up on Facebook to stir things in the right direction? Delegate Smeagol?
Well, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to put up the list. We're getting ready to of all of the those who have contributed to those who voted against, so that you can look at it and say, this person's in my area, or maybe all of your delegates are good on the Second Amendment or good on issues that you want. You look to a neighboring county and find one that isn't. And when you hear, you know what, you're not my constituent, it doesn't bother me. And what you tell them, I don't have to be a constituent. I just have to know who's running against you. I have to contribute to them, knock on doors for them, and help them defeat you. So you can help defeat the people even if they're not in your district. And that's what you need to do, is identify them, point them out, and point out those us who stand up there and say, I'm with you, but we really don't fight hard enough and we don't do enough, because there's lots of people standing in the wings who are well qualified, who are going to come up and actually do the job.
The question was, what can you do on Facebook and things like that? On Facebook, first of all, go to Delegate Smigo's page and like it. Share it, like it, put it all over the place. Secondly, you can go to the Maryland General Assembly Facebook page. You can go to pretty much every incumbent right now has a Facebook page, even Mike Miller. You can go to their pages, you can see what they're doing, you can message the pages, you can, if myself, Delegate Schmiegel, any candidate here, anybody shares anything pertaining to a violation of your rights, pertaining to anything that you feel is vital that people should know, share it. Share it on every friend's page, share it on every page you know, email it, Twitter, MySpace, whatever they have. Just share, 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 because the more you share, the more people see it. The more people see it, the more people know, the more people know, the more people representatives we have in state capitals and our nation's capital. So please just share.
Real quickly, if you go to delegatemike.com, I'll put up the actual documents from the state police. The FBI recently sent a letter, and it went out to all of the gun dealers in the state of Maryland. And it told them, if you got a bad guy standing in front of you who hasn't had his background check, and you think there might be something wrong, because that guy says, I want to buy the most powerful firearm you got and all the ammunition, and you're a law-abiding gun dealer, and you want to check their background, the FBI told them, you can't check them. You can't call in and check. And they said, you can't tell anybody we're telling you this. You can't show this letter to anybody, and this is confidential. Well, I put it up on the internet and said, you come after me because you don't have a right as the FBI to tell people that you regulate, that they can't tell people what they're saying about the law. I said, the blood of our children is going to be on their hands when some bad guy gets a firearm because they weren't allowed to go and call in and say, does this guy have a record? They're just waiting and trying to set us up just like they did down in Fast and Furious, so somebody looks like they gave a firearm to somebody who shouldn't have had it. So if you go there, I don't have a problem putting up the documents. I don't have a problem putting up the information that we get from the state police and calling them out, and that's where you can get it and share it with your friends. DelegateMike.com.
Thank you, gentlemen. One last answer to the question from Mr. Karras. My website, which is the organization that set this up, is called Gun Rights Across America. We have a national web page, which is Gun Rights Across America, kind of simple. And we have a state page, Gun Rights Across America -Maryland. Please join them and like them, and there we can help you by giving you information and following along when we have breaks, news, or information from our various other sources. Also, one of the organizations that's not with us here today because of sickness, but is very much involved in the fight, Maryland Shall Issue, MSI. Find their page, like their page, and follow them. Join them, be a member, sign up, because your membership counts as well as your presence on Facebook. Third, the old bugaboo in the room, the NRA. They have a Facebook page, they have internet points of contact, and again, they have people who work 7 days a week, 365 days a year, gathering news and information, following legislative updates, and putting that information out so that you are not surprised. We have in the past seen where the state and the federal government have set up hearings on 2 days' notice, hoping that you won't be given the opportunity to come up and speak. If you want notification of those short-term, short-fused things, Delegate Mike can help, but it's better if you have a stream of a dozen different people gathering intelligence information and sharing it forward for you. Question?
Back to what you were talking about on the NICS check, does anybody know if that one guy out of 50,000 would have been caught had the dealer been allowed to do the check?
If the state police had done their job, which is doing the background checks in the time period, they would have, because the state police claim the reason they don't allow the NICS checks is they do 3 separate things that aren't reported to the feds. One of them is checking the juvenile record for whether or not you had an arrest before that would have been more than a year in jail. The second is whether you had a second DUI or you have a domestic violence thing. All 3 of these can be answered as questions on the 77R. You don't have to have 120 days when it takes 7 seconds. And I do have a bill in to change us from a point of contact state to a point of sale state so that we will take care of that problem. That's pending. And if I could, one last thing. I just got my HQL license the other day, number 304. Now here's the problem. That proves to me we are being in a registration state because I'm a licensed instructor for the NRA in handgun safety and use. I have a permit to carry. If this was just about making sure I know how to handle a firearm, I wouldn't need an HQL. So as it stands right now, I, as an instructor, can teach a state policeman or a police officer how to safely handle a firearm, and they are exempt from needing an HQL. But I, as their instructor, have to get an HQL. Now that tells me this is about registration and not about whether you safely own a firearm. And we're going to be taking that question up because you should not be having people who are qualified have to get this HQL. It's just about registration, has nothing to do with safety.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry to take up some of your time. I forgot to say something earlier about social media. Like Delegate Schmiegel, there's a page for myself. It's Jason P. Delizio, D-E-L-I-Z-I-O. Secondly, what I forgot earlier when I was on my tirade about O'Malley and Obama, I forgot to mention one very important thing that made this even more personal for me. My beautiful girlfriend, Christina, she's pregnant with our first child. When she told me that she was pregnant, after the initial shock, I realized that what I did last session in Annapolis, being vocal, what Delegate Schmiegel does every day, is even more important. Not for us. It's important for us, but what's more important is it's for our children and our grandchildren. I hope it never happens, but if someone breaks in my home, the first thing I'm going to do is get my Glock 357. The second thing I'm going to do is call the police, because most of the time they don't get there in time. My sole purpose on this planet right now is to protect my girlfriend and my child. So if you have children, please inform them of their rights. Rights from God, rights in the Constitution, and the Maryland State Constitution that's all too forgotten about. Lastly, I just want to thank this man right here. Last session, I didn't know who he was. I heard of him, but I didn't know him. Over the course of the session, I got to know him. I respected him for his service in the United States Marine Corps. I respected him for being a public servant in Annapolis. As I've gotten to know him, talked with his staff, there's one thing I've learned that I'll never forget. Whether you're his constituent or not, whether you're from the opposite party, this man will take the time to speak with you, address your concerns, and do whatever he can within his power to make sure the people, you, his employer, his boss, are taken care of. So if you would please join me in a round of applause for Delegate Michael Schmiegel.
Any other questions for the gentleman? Or my comments before we have our last speaker.
Could this lovely young lady with the "Don't Tread on Me" flag come up here, please? Yes, you too, sir. You can come up here too. This is the kind of young people we need, who are smart enough to know right here. Don't tread on me. Show that flag to the person peeking out the window. See this? Back off. Go away.
Thank you, both anonymous flag persons, for A, coming out and joining us and supporting us, and B, respecting the wishes of the DGS police and removing those dangerous and deadly flagpoles. Because God knows what you could have done with a flagpole. Which sort of feeds me into one of my first points. One of the reasons we have the Second Amendment. How many here know about Hapkido, Jiu-Jitsu, Karate? Do you know why those martial arts were created, invented, and practiced for thousands of years?
Natural law.
Because the people, the peons, the peasantry of Japan, Korea, China, feudal Europe were not allowed to bear arms. Only the aristocrats, only the ruling class, only the monarchy were deemed worthy by the hand of God to carry steel and arms and defend the people. So, bringing to more modern history, 1715 and 1745, any Scotsmen in the group? I don't see any kilts today. It's a good day for wearing a kilt. The English had a little problem with the Scots when they conquered Scotland, or they thought they had conquered Scotland, and they found the Scots resisted. They found the Scots resisted violently, passionately, and would not submit to a foreign king. Kind of like us, although we were nominally British, but half Scots and Irish and all other things mixed in. So the Britons, the King of England, deemed that no Scotsman should wear a kilt or carry a dirk, a dagger, a stick, a weapon, a firearm, a sword, saber, or any other dangerous weapon, under penalty of execution, death if caught while armed. That's how much they feared the private Scots Highlander, that they ordered it. Anyone caught carrying a weapon dies at the hand of the Royal Army immediately. No trial. They didn't have the Fourth Amendment. They didn't have the Fifth. We, our forefathers in 1789 and 1793, knew the history of the Highland clearances and the English policy on disarming the people of Ireland, the people of Scotland. Ireland! How many Irish? Banned because of their faith from carrying arms, from bearing arms. Our forefathers knew this, that a leader, a government, a monarchy could order that people be stripped of their right to self-defense because of their religion, their faith. How close are we to that today in America? It's debatable, but it's often a common comment made in various chat rooms and email groups and others. These are the reasons why in our Constitution it says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The other half of that statement talks about the militia, a well-regulated militia. Ladies and gentlemen, in case you didn't know, who are the militia of Maryland? Everybody raise your hand. You are all militiamen and women, unless, of course, we have anybody under the age of 18. And you are a member of the militia until the day you die. Because you are we the people. We are the people. And that's what we're here today and another day and another day to represent to the government that it's our country and our government and our rules. Never mind those who think they are the newer aristocrats. We stood as a militia in the Revolution. 1776, Long Island. It was the Maryland militia that held off the bulk of the British Army when the Battle of Long Island went badly. For our New Yorkers who left the room, it was Maryland militia. Raw, ordinary men from their farms and fields. Less than months, 2 or 3 months after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, the Maryland militia stood against the best professional army in the world, the British Army, and held their ground. Those are our grandfathers and ancestors. The same as the Maryland militia who went to fight in the Civil War. On both sides. Gray and blue, they didn't care. But they were unified as Marylanders because they fought to defend their homes, their people, their state, the same as we do today. So this is what we're talking about. This is what this entire document is about, the history behind the words. The empowerment of the people, the empowerment of the militia to stand against any and all comers. Our organization, Gun Rights Across America, is going to be in the forefront, but we need the individual grassroots, you and you and you, each and every one of you, to be part of it, because we can't speak for the people if the people don't join, register, vote, come out, and be involved. And that concludes my brief words. I'd like to introduce Mr. Alexander Karras, who will bring us to a more rousing close.
Thank you. Oh, 3 pages. It's all been said, but I'm very proud to tell everybody that I've been banned from Martin O'Malley's Facebook page. Anyway, 3 pages. There are a couple things that I can highlight that I'd like to just mention. There's a book called A Tale of Three Empires by Jim Bramlett. When nations fall, there are 10 factors that have appeared in great civilizations of the past that have brought them down. But as little as 3 have brought civilizations down. Let me go through them. Number 1, increase in lawlessness. Number 2, loss of economic discipline. 3, rising bureaucracy. 4, decline in education. 5, weakening of cultural foundations. 6, loss of respect for traditions. 7, increase in materialism. 8, rise in immorality. 9, decay of religious belief. And 10, devaluing human life. Congratulations, America. We have hit all 10. All 10. There's a thing called natural law. Things can recorrect themselves as civilizations have fallen. There's a divine law, a secular law, and there's the law of history. All of these factors combined ultimately together and separately say one thing. When you have oppression, you have defense. So as this oppression is mounting on our liberties and our freedoms that have been given to us by the Creator, these inalienable rights, the natural order will take care of business. Now, at this point, when we see legislation coming out, and I shared this with Charles earlier, this is shocking. Many of us have taken the oath of office. I have taken it seriously. The oath of office has no expiration date on it. It's very specific in the sense that it talks about you swear or affirm, and that's basically a promise, isn't it? To uphold and protect not one constitution, but it actually talks about 2. The Maryland Constitution and our federal Constitution. So here in Maryland, you've got a double responsibility to do this. So when people propose legislation that is ludicrous, for example, House Bill 67. I want to shout out to Don Dyer if he's hearing this or will hear this. Thanks for shooting this in an email to me. HB 67 is entitled Duty to Retreat. This bill states that you have no right to respond to violence with anything other than retreat, that self-defense can only be used if you can prove that you had no means to escape. In other words, It doesn't matter that a violent criminal is in your home with a gun threatening you, your wife, or your children. You may not defend them as long as you can crawl out of a window, climb down a fire escape, and run down the street for help. Or while you're in that bedroom, he can clean out the living room and the rest of your house while you are forced to retreat and remain in your bedroom. Is that crazy?
Insane.
Is that idiotic?
Insane.
It's insane. It's insane. So I'd like to thank Delegate Frank Conway for introducing that bill. Now, when I talked about the oath of office, the oath of office has an escape clause in it, and I don't know whether you know that or not. And there's a catchphrase in it, and it says, "I will, to the best of my ability, do what I have to do." So let's say you're just a limited person. Does that mean we have to have an IQ test before we hire you? Maybe you can introduce that into office, because you can't be an idiot and bring out things like this. It goes to you too. Oh, and the same idiot, I don't mind calling him an idiot because this really is insane. Delegate Frank Conway. Hi, my name is Alex Karras. He has introduced HB 115 regarding GPS technology to track every firearm sold and possessed in Maryland.
Insane.
Oh, sure. All the criminals are just going to line up for that one, aren't they?
Frank also previously suggested that we rewrite the Torah.
Oh, that we rewrite the Torah.
He did.
Hava Megillah.
He made
2 or 3. I have a lot more to bring, but you know, folks, we've had some great speakers. It's a privilege to speak to each and every one of you, and I'd like to thank the speakers, thank each and every one of you for coming out in the cold. And Mike, you want to close?
Yeah. 67, where basically it's a retreat bill, does that apply to law enforcement and the National Guard as well, or is it just for citizens?
Did y'all hear that? Does that apply to law enforcement and or just citizens? Yes.
No, it only applies to you serfs. Good slaves hide and cringe. Free citizens resist.
Wrapping up pretty much everybody's talking points. A, we have legislators that don't listen to the people and they follow their agenda, introducing unconstitutional laws. I mean, last year when we were here, it was an unprecedented turnout. Thousands and thousands of people here to midnight. It was, had that ever happened before?
No, it's the biggest crowd that we ever had.
Biggest crowd ever had. Yet, those people just did their thing. B, we have legislators who violate their oath of office. C, we have legislators we can't vote out because of voter ID laws and droves of dead people, etc., showing up to cast votes. I personally believe that we have electronic voting machines that are hacked and give us skewed results. Florida, 175 registered and 175,000 registered voters, 250,000 votes were cast. How'd they do that? Can somebody explain that one to me? Ohio, 150% of the voters showed up. How do you do that? We won't be allowed to go to the ballot box and drop in a paper ballot and dip our thumb in purple ink. I think that's the only solution. So, having said all of that, we've got a lot against this, but if we get on our Facebook pages and copy and paste what we need to paste, I actually lost a few friends because of my political noise, but I gained more. So those that I lost, good riddance. Thanks so much, folks.
Alex, I'd like to ask you one more small favor. since we haven't got any svelte, sultry, Britney Spears types, and Miley Cyrus couldn't make it, I'd like you, Mr. Karras, to lead us all in a brief or voluminous recitation of our national anthem. Would you do that for us?
I'd be honored.
I'd be honored. I did it last year. Our flag is over there on our building there.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming under rockets' red glare and bombs bursting in air gave truth to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? We are still free. Amen.
Exquisite, sir. Exquisite. Mr. Delizia. Or Reverend. Depends on the day. I give you, sir, the last word.
Before I close with prayer, this is Annapolis. And earlier, while someone was speaking, I saw a midshipman walk up past the governor's mansion. So while you're in Annapolis, if you see a midshipman, stop them and thank them. I've never been a midshipman, but I know some, and far too often people just completely ignore them, that they're even here. And that's unacceptable. So if you see one, please thank them. And we'll bow their head in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for us coming together in the name of God, in the name of the United States, in the name of our great state, Maryland, the free state, which it will remain. Lord, as we part ways today, I pray that each and every one of us take something out of this, out of the speeches, out of the passion, and out of the love for our Constitution, for you, for our state, and pass that passion and love on to the next generation. Lord, we have a lot of representatives here in Annapolis. We have a lot of delegates and senators. We all pray that you be with them and guide them to make the right choice. To make the right choice for the people, for themselves. A choice that will make us proud to say we live in this great state of Maryland and we are good American Christians. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our presentation for the afternoon and the time on our allotted permit. And as good law-abiding citizens, we will honor the conditions that say is imposed upon us for free speech. Thank you all for coming out on an interesting and blustery day, taking the time for each one of our speakers, who came some a long distance, some down the street. And thank you all for those of you who couldn't make it, but who are with us in spirit. Remember again, this is about you. This is about our rights. Not about any one of us as speakers. We're just the guys carrying the torch. But we can't do it without you behind us. Thank you, and good night.